Okay, I would like to share now. It says I disabled. Screen sharing disabled.
Oh, hold on. Let me try to do that. I'm going to do this. Where's PALAKA? All right, you should be able to do that now. But I think we're doing 46 also, since 44, 45 have no purport.
Oh, 46 also?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Let me go there then.
I can also put it on the screen.
Okay, while you're doing that, I will read it.
Okay.
Yogaya emeva durvarnam bhavayishyanti sadhavaha nirvairabhir atmanam yachchilam anuvartitum. In order to follow in his footsteps, saintly persons will try to emulate his character by practicing freedom from animosity, just as the purifying process rectify gold of inferior quality. Purport. Yoga practice, the process of purifying one's existential identity, is based mainly on self-control. Without self-control, one cannot practice freedom from animosity. In the conditional state, every living being is envious of another living being. But in the liberated state, there is an absence of animosity. Prahlad Maharaj was tortured by his father in so many ways, yet after the death of his father, he prayed for his father's liberation by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He did not ask any benediction that he might have asked, but he prayed that his atheistic father might be liberated. He never cursed any of those persons who engaged in torturing him at the instigation of his father. Beautiful. Okay, let's try this again. Okay. Are you able to see the?
Yes.
Okay. So today we're going to be talking about the science of missteps. And Srimad Bhagavatam is elaborating upon this, not just from the conception of Kashyapa and Diti, but they've been elaborating upon these missteps ever since the beginning of the first conception of creation with Sri Brahma, our teacher. Full screen. So, why conceptions matter? Conceptions matter, or first let's define what conceptions actually are. We were discussing this in our previous class with you, Sahadeh, where we were discussing your conception of taste. And you were saying that your favorite food was fufu at the time. Is that still the same?
Yes. And the least favorite is still the same. I remember.
Nice. Nice. Um, for some reason, there's some sound that's being triggered, so I'm just going to keep this on reduced mode at the moment. So, yeah, we were discussing that every experience that we have a underlying prioritization grid that occurs. And so you were describing that fufu was your favorite. So if your baseline was, I could take it or leave it, fufu was the top, and then mayonnaise was the bottom. And so everybody has these types of prioritization systems that occur. And this is all due to our intelligence. It allows us to differentiate, to distinguish, to identify, and to sequence everything that we experience. So we can go from our sense of smell, our sense of taste, our sense of sight, our sense of touch, and our sense of hearing. I was recently speaking with somebody, and as they were talking to me, they heard a rumbling in the closet, and they had the conception that they should be all alone right now. So why was the closet rumbling? And it had a little like that, and then a few seconds later, it was, what would you do if you heard that in the closet that was supposed to have nothing moving? And then all of a sudden, you hear that sound. The senses don't know what to label it. Your intelligence doesn't know what to label it because you don't have access to it. You have limited sense perception. It's in another room, it's in the closet. So then the mind thinks, well, how much time do I have before I need to react to it? Do I need to react to it? All of these processes are happening before you even label anything. I've been really into this one website recently called shabda.co. Anybody who's interested in looking at the scientific basis for Srimad Bhagavatam, I would highly encourage go visit that site. He has some fantastic analogies. And one point that he brings up on why Srimad Bhagavatam is the most ideal science and why the Western way of thinking right now, which we're all under, is extremely tamasic, is because it only deals with the labeling portion of reality. Why that matters is because when we were just discussing, there's identifying, you hear the sound, or you know the taste of fufu, or you know taste, etc. You're tasting something. But then you're distinguishing it from other taste. Every time you distinguish something, you can put a label, you can put a name on it. Then you prioritize it, you sequence it. So there's already 3 stages of counting that are disregarded by modern science. And what they leave us with is the label, that physical example of a label. So therefore, you're leaving out 3/4 of reality. And Srimad Bhagavatam is constantly talking about how the subtle reality reflects into the physical reality. Another way of saying that is that our subjective consciousness, that which only you experience, as science and philosophers call qualia, that experience of experience, that is the subtle realm. That is where you count at all times. You identify, you're distinguishing, you're sequencing or prioritizing everything from goals and needs to labeling it. And so if we had more time, we would go through this whole exercise. And someday I might go through it because this process of conceptualization is what Srimad Bhagavatam is consistently talking about. And what it allows us to do is to be able to see our day to day reality, from the suit that we have to the glasses that we have in our pocket to the technology that we see, and all related to Prakriti, to the absolute truth. Because these are all things that we are seeing, or tat. What is that? Tattva. What is that? What is that? It sounds hard. It sounds this. It sounds that. We can put so many descriptions to it. Srimad Bhagavatam is saying every aspect of our existence is full of meaning. Don't let certain so called brahmanas within your society tell you that life has no meaning or that consciousness is just an illusion. We have to understand that they are only saying that because they have been brainwashed through centuries of colonization and a conception that was born from Ditthi, but not the Ditthi that we're going to discuss here, because there's a nuance here. So Ditthi gave birth to all conceptions that are not bound, or not conceptions that are divided from the absolute truth. Her sister, Aditi, her powerful conception gave birth to all conceptions that align to, unify with, unite to the will of the absolute truth. And Kashyapa, the husband, what he did, he was of clear mind, of clear intelligence. Kashyapa, that's what it means. One who has clear intelligence or a clear mind. And so at this point, Diti became jealous of her sister, who was giving birth to all of these divine conceptions. And she had no children, no creations. And so while her husband was meditating on the absolute truth, she said, I need to create myself. Look, my sister has already created. This is my duty to create. And everything she was saying was appropriate. However, we'll see that she was using her speech to move someone away from their ideal self, which in this case was her husband, or our intelligence, right? Kashyapa is always here to enable us to focus where we are supposed to go, ideally. However, our intelligence, our mind can be misled. We should be thinking about how our mind, due to whatever circumstance occurs due to the approach of time, how does that actually affect us? Srimad Bhagavatam is giving us that divine vision. And it's saying, hey, there's all types of conceptions of life that you can have. There's conceptions in an animal form, a plant form, the atomic form. These are all there. These are all talked about within Srimad Bhagavatam. This is a science that goes all the way down to the macro to the micro, or micro to the macro, should I say. Let's see if I can just do this full screen. But what was her misstep? Her misstep was rooted in envy. And we just read in verse 46 that eventually these conceptions would turn into the personality, the conception of Prahlad. And what did it say? He was not envious of anyone, didn't have any animosity towards anybody, even to those who were breaking all forms of duty. His own father was trying to harm him. And yet, Prahlad was overflowing with blessings and mercy and bliss for everyone around him because he was self satisfied, always aligning his consciousness and all of his conceptions to the biggest conception that there is. And what is that biggest conception? It is that absolute truth. See, when we talk about the absolute truth, think about it in variable form. If you have 2 plus x equals 4, you can solve for x and say that's 2. And so we need to have a variable for what do we call the following state of being, cause, or conception. There has to be a conception. Actually, before I get there, let's go to see what science says about conceptions, modern science. Let me know if you hear this, okay? So we're going to talk about the scientific basis of a black body.
The audio doesn't seem to be working right now.
Oh, can you hear us? You hear it?
Yeah, the audio. We're not
Sorry,
hearing the audio.
you can't hear the audio?
No.
Okay, yeah. So what he was describing here, and I wanted to show everyone that there is a basis in science called black body radiation. And this is a conceptual idea that they know to be true. So again, we're talking about conceptions. Conceptions is taking the many, finding the commonalities, and making sure you can place it in a particular bucket, a singularity. And so with black body radiation, they describe how the heat and light that come out of a black body, so the sun is an example of a black body, it can emit and reflect any type of energy, any type of heat or light that it comes with without ever diminishing. Now, the sun eventually will diminish. Therefore, it's not an ideal black body. So, this is a definition that science has used to make a tremendous amount of scientific breakthroughs. Tremendous amount. Like, we would not be able to use the laptop in this communication today if we weren't able to do this. They've never seen a black body, but they know that this concept has been extremely useful. And if they were ever able to see it, it would have these qualities. So, in this same way, Srimad Bhagavatam is saying, don't stop there. There is a concept that not only allows for all temporary light, heat, but all eternal light and heat. But not only that, it allows it to be, it is a conception that can manifest and absorb all conceptions of experience, not just heat and light. And so we have to ask ourselves in our educational system, what do we call that term? Do they even try to teach us that term? Do we even know that term? And that's why the Brahmanas, or those who understand how to teach the absolute truth to all of human society, how to connect, how to unite, how to use the conceptions of Aditi for the human society in order to best regulate themselves and to attain overall satisfaction and reach the most ideal goal of human life. So this conception has to contain everything of an ideal black body that we were just discussing, but then also it has to contain all temporary conceptions in full, and then all eternal conceptions in full. And then when you were able to do both of those, you could draw a little dotted line around it. What would you call that variable? Srimad Bhagavatam says that is Brahman, or the absolute truth. Now, well, first, does that make sense? Is there any questions before I continue to go on? Or any comments right now? Just want to make sure we're tracking. From anybody? Okay. So there's this concept of the absolute truth. Now, the absolute truth has to be defined by that definition. But Srimad Bhagavatam doesn't just stop there, because it has the concept of there is the impersonal light that spreads everywhere, that light that allows anything to be able to see anything. Just like the sun in the sky, if it's dark outside, you can't see. You're stuck in the forest. You're stuck in the forest of time and space, of material conditioning. However, when that sunlight comes, then you can start seeing the different creepers, the trees, the birds flying. And as you develop a relationship with the absolute truth, you begin to see various aspects of the absolute truth. And Srimad Bhagavatam is the Shastra, is the story that Vyasadeva, who divided the Vedas for the benefit of all humanity, once he completed all of his writings, wrote all the scriptures down in order to give human beings proper guidance, he was still not satisfied until he wrote Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the story of the illustrious devotees of the absolute truth and all of their loving adventures. And it's a roller coaster ride. It goes up and down and all around. And this story of Diti is just that.
I think Mata Sri Upanishad had something to say.
Oh, great.
PALAKA, Prabhu.
Yes, Mother, thanks for joining.
Hi, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I am Hare Krishna, everyone. Haribol.
Hare Krishna.
I am so out of this world now. Thank you. With this conception matters. This is wonderful. And how what I wanted to ask you though, could you speak a little bit more on the purpose of Aditi, and
Yes.
her purpose? Could you just
Yes, definitely.
lighten
So,
us up on her form and what she
yes.
represents? Okay.
And so, no, perfect. Great question, right? And so,
PALAKA, Prabhu, excuse me. Mata Sri Upanishad, are you asking about Aditi or Diti?
I'm asking about Aditi.
All right.
okay.
DT's sister.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. So Diti is the sister of, sorry, Aditi and Diti, they're sisters.
Yeah.
And Aditi is the father, or sorry, is the mother of all the demigods, all of the temporary conceptions that control our reality. Diti, and so Aditi means to unify. Think about yoga, the process to connect our consciousness to the absolute truth. She represents.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Would you think of her as in terms of maybe Prakriti, the creative energy?
Yes, yes. So this is all of these concepts, when we're going to put them in the temporary category, all temporary concepts, if you looped it all together, let's say you put everything, past, present, future, real or imagined, and you put it all into one bucket, that is Prakriti.
Aye.
Now, there are various conceptions within conceptions, but yes, all temporary conceptions ultimately reside within Prakriti. Now, Diti has a very specific quality that we can recognize in our own life. Now, as you can see by this, these are partial conceptions. It's not the complete conception, because the complete conception would be that personality. However, she is a partial she is a partial conception of Prakriti. Does that make sense? Or do you understand? Because
Yes.
she doesn't have the complete, because she is a unifying conception. Your thoughts, when you are trying to go about your day-to-day activities, when I know you just recently uh, left the hospital, and you were telling me that your mind was over here, over there. Sometimes you may have thoughts that were born out of ditthi. Sometimes you may have had thoughts that were born out of aditthi.
Yes.
Some thoughts
Yes.
are united with the absolute truth, and some thoughts want to enjoy separately from the absolute truth. So Diti at this moment saw the glories of Aditi. She was giving birth to all of these conceptions that were going to
Mm.
help people become satisfied, help people align themselves, help everybody who's stuck in time and space to be aligned to the absolute truth, bringing all satisfaction in within and bringing satisfaction to the heart. Diti
So would you
was just,
say this then? I don't want to cut you off, but
yeah,
when you're speaking about conceptions of matter, we were speaking about smell, taste, sight, touch, and hearing, and we were
yeah,
experiencing all of those at
yes,
the same time, right? And
yes.
and are you saying that DT was wondering, or she wanted to become a part of this? Is that what you're saying? Is she want to?
Diti, the Srimad Bhagavatam says that she first saw the quality of envy within her.
Wow,
And she
wow.
said, oh, she has that. My sister has that. Why
Mm-hmm,
don't I? Why don't I
mm-hmm,
have that? There's been enough time that's passed. Where's my sons? Where are my conceptions that can control the whole universe, that can
mm,
influence the universe, that can influence human beings from generations ago to generations in the future? And so that was a misstep. That was
mm,
a misstep within her consciousness. Then she
mm,
ended up further reverberating through time, started to use her speech to not only push herself towards that conception of envy and that road, but then she started influencing her own husband by saying words that had good intent, but just at the wrong time. And her husband said,
mm,
Kashyapa, that which is of clear mind, that intelligence, that conception said, oh, let's be aware that we need to prioritize, we need to sequence our actions in the proper way, and they should always be aligned to thy will be done. Right
mm.
now, he said, if you look around, you understand the time. Lord Shiva and his associates are all around, and they are the conceptions that are destructive in nature. See, when people recently, a friend asked me, you say this is not a religion, but when I went to the temple, I saw all of these gods.
Hmm.
See, all of these conceptions that we're dealing with, they're parts and parcels of the supreme conception. And so Ditthi is a part of a larger conception. Aditi is a part of a larger conception. Srimad Bhagavatam explains how these conceptions or these names, right? Because there's certain qualities, certain names, or certain forms, or certain pastimes that are
Mhm.
associated with each one of these very, very powerful conceptions or personalities. And we can
Oh,
recognize it in our day to day life if we practice this Sankirtan movement, because if we were talking about this process of space all the way to earth, the five senses, but then the subtle senses are even more, because that's where we get our intentions, our morals, our decisions, and we put the meaning of those experiences to help us guide us through our next help or hurt, depending on if we're taking it from Diti or Adviti, and our next steps. But Prakriti, the illusions are so strong that we have to be able to understand that sometimes we become illusioned. And what do we do when we have a misstep? And that's what Diti is showing in this story. She's showing that once she actually got what she wanted, because Kashyapa, Jiva Goswami says that Kashyapa was also at fault because he didn't, he should have actually understood that even though she had the right intention, he had compassion for her. But due to that compassion, he ended up doing the wrong activity or the right activity at the wrong time. He had good intention, but he still had to experience the consequences of not being in alignment with the absolute truth. In the
Look
same
what
way,
emotion will do. I'm telling you, that's incredible, that understanding that we have of someone that's so highly evolved, like
yes,
him, you know.
yes, yes,
He was still influenced by that subtle energy that you were speaking about.
yes.
Isn't that
And so,
amazing?
and so when we go through our lives, it's so beautiful because Srimad Bhagavatam is showing us through the lives of these Bhagavats, right? They are the ones who possess the absolute truth due to unmotivated loving devotion. It's simply amazing. And the last time we were talking, Brahma had some missteps. But remember, when he first created, again, we're talking about the bucket that contains all conceptions. When Brahma created, he first created the fog and misconceptions. And that's where our ego. So whenever we are conceiving of anything, happiness, distress, or that spectrum across the five senses or our subtle senses, we should understand I'm having a conception of happiness. I'm having a conception of anger. I'm having a conception of or a feeling or an experience or something I can label. There is thatness, that quality, that guna that we are experiencing. We can then say, oh, what is the cause of this? And so if we have a misstep, we are able to show that with our process, with our relationship with the absolute truth, she illustrates just how to rectify the situation. And this is very key for us to understand because Maya is extremely tricky, and Srimad Bhagavatam is constantly showing us how Maya tricks everyone who's not completely surrendered to the absolute truth. So what does she do? It says that she lamented. She had penitence, which is uh, a word that everybody should look up, but it's describing once you realize something that you had a misstep, it's putting in the proper course of action to prevent that misstep from happening again. Now, Disti's misstep was
Just
big.
like repentance.
Yes, 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 repentance. And remember, Ditti's misstep was a big misstep because she is a ginormous conception that gave birth to all asuras. And think about the nature of asuras. Okay, so no, before I get there. So she lamented, penitence, proper course of action afterwards, and she properly deliberated. These are the proper feelings that we should have when we become victims of illusion. And Kashyapa said, because you are always aligned to the absolute truth. And I can't tell if he was saying a little joke here, but he says, and fond of Shiva, right? Remember, she became active when Shiva was around. And so it's because you're fond of Shiva also, or the mode of destruction. But again, Shiva, she's playing this pastime. So again, just like the sun and the sun rays, there's a dirty pond, those sun rays can purify that pond or that puddle, whatever you want to call it, and never lose or never be diminished in any way. So these conceptions, when we hear the missteps of all of these personalities within Srimad Bhagavatam, they're all spotless. However, due to these misconceptions, she had to give birth to a major asura, a conception that always wanted to be divided away from the absolute truth out of envy, out of animosity, out of feeling that time did something wrong to his brother, and therefore he was completely antagonistical to him, to the absolute truth. But because she had those three processes down within her conception, that means that we can access those same qualities, and that we should access those same qualities. And we can look within ourselves and ask, when we have that type of condition, do we reflect upon it and say, okay, let me stop that type of bad behavior? Or do we do what modern society does and just rationalize it and say, well, you know what? There is no meaning to any of this anyway. Those feelings that you feel, those actions that you had, are all pointless. Srimad Bhagavatam says, for those who want to live the ideal existence, for those who want to stop the constant entrapment in space and time, what we can do is align ourselves in that way, and we will be able to taste that relationship that allows us to see that eternal ideal conception known as the absolute truth, but not just the absolute truth in any form, but the absolute truth in its most ideal, beautiful, and knowledgeable form. And so as we go about our day-to-day behaviors, we can say, oh, even though I made this misstep, if I continue and learn from Diti and how she rectified her behavior, then I will know that sooner or later, some conception, some quality that is very Prahlad-like in nature will manifest within my heart, even through the trying times that may occur due to those missteps. Again, Bhishma had to be laid out on a bed of arrows due to various missteps. But Krishna still gave him all protection. And he was such a great hero, such a great warrior, that he was built for all of it. And so are we. We have these pastimes, we have our leelas that we're trying to do. And as we are listening to Srimad Bhagavatam, we should understand that we are a part of this eternal leela, and that these stories are always eternal and always there for us to be accessed. But for us to access it, we have to have proper devotee association, and we have to try to control the urges of the tongue, the belly, and the genitals. And in that way, we will be qualified to lead everyone all over the world. And this should be applied and not only within our subjective consciousness. We're running out of time, but I had a whole neuroscience point of view that I would bring into it, but that can be for another time. Because these principles are clearly and distinctly applicable and seen from the microcosm. Again, we're talking about the neuroscience of behavior. When you study dopamine, it shows all of this to be true. When you look at human behavior, human activity, with delayed gratification to instant gratification, and how those qualities, wanting to enjoy at the wrong time, or too much or too little, all of these create reverberations. And it says in text 43 that, or it's text 42, that, oh, it is so glorious that my son, she says, will be killed by the arms of the Lord. Because the absolute truth is Sat Chit and Ananda. So when he gets involved, he sees bliss, he sees love, he sees that which we are trying to get to. He is that most ideal. His conception is a conception that's larger than any conception of God in the West. And so that's why many of the Brahmins in the past tried to not let anyone understand Sanskrit or these stories, because if you read it like a Westerner or like those who have been colonized and you're reading it, like an animal. And so we have to understand that Sankhya, Bhagavad Sankhya, is the perfect way to conceptualize all of reality, not just when we're reading scripture, but when we're driving on the road, when we're at work, when we're having our conversations with our loved ones or those who we perceive to be our enemies. Are we using ideal speech, which is the mode of goodness, speech that's in the mode of passion, which, hey, it could possibly be ideal, or speech that is can't possibly be ideal? And we are constantly borrowing from these conceptions. So again, when people say, oh, this is a faith, this is a religion, we say, no, all these conceptions boil down, it can be abstracted into, in a tree-like formation, to three concepts: creation, maintenance, destruction. But again, thinking about the Sanskrit portion, it's not that simple. There's many qualities that need to be understood, but we are bridge preaching in that way to say creation, maintenance, and destruction because you have tangible experience with it. And every conception that you had, every experience of life that you've had, that you can say, oh, it has been created, it was maintained for a little bit, and it disappeared. You understand that you have already been in relationship with and have experienced Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva to various degrees. Because these are all, we are witnessing partial conceptions of a greater truth, a greater principle. These principles are so key in life because you can even see them in farming, you can see them in every religion. And these principles are there to guide us. These are the ideas, the conceptions that guide our life, that control our life, as Srimad Bhagavatam says. And we have to analyze whatever we're feeling. Where is it coming from? Is it coming from a divine place or a place that is trying to be divided from the absolute truth? So when we rectify our situations, then we are as glorious as Diti. And the future activities, the future conceptions that will ripple effect throughout time, eventually will have a Prahlad like quality about it. Now, Diti is the greatest conception. Therefore, her son was killed by a even more greater conception. Our misconceptions are usually much, 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 much smaller, much, much more watered down, but we receive the reactions nevertheless. But when we're doing this, we can always have faith, always have hope that as long as I am taking the practice of what our acharyas have said, we will constantly be living in the world of Srimad Bhagavatam, the most ideal world, understanding that, as Bhakti Tirtha Swami said, consciousness is the greatest battlefield that has ever existed. And we must be spiritual warriors. And so, in the month of the advent of Gita Jayanti, we have to think about how this battle of consciousness, how the intelligence can be pulled apart due to the conceptions of the asuras. And again, the asuras are those who don't rectify their behavior. They just rationalize it. They rationalize it away and try to double down and to keep on going and digging themselves deeper and deeper in a hole. We're jivas, everybody makes mistakes, but course correcting, aiming for the proper target is key to life. And so there's two verses that come to mind, and it's Srimad Bhagavad Gita, the first verse, where it's Dhritarashtra Uvacha Dharmakshetri Kurukshetri Samaveta Yuyutsavaha Mamaka Pandavaschaiva. And so it's saying, "O Sanjaya, what did my sons and the sons of Pandu do when they assembled at a place of pilgrimage?" Remember, this is your consciousness. Your consciousness, the conceptions that you hold should be a place of pilgrimage. But it said, what did my sons and the sons of Pandu do when they met at this place of pilgrimage? Desiring to fight. Bhakti Tirtha Swami was talking in that same lecture, and he says, people are now starting to enjoy themselves to death. When we are enjoying ourselves or over enjoying, we are taking those conceptions from the asuras. And those asuras are only getting their energy due to the mode of ignorance, or Lord Shiva. We don't want to be a part of that because there's much headache and ill and reverberations of destruction all around. The way we don't become a part of that is through following the nectar of instruction, verse 1, controlling the urge of the tongue, controlling the mind's demands, controlling our anger, controlling our belly and the genitals. This will allow us to lead all conceptions of ditthi, or all temporary conceptions with proper mind, like Kashyapa, like Marichi, and most divinely like Narada. We're doing nothing but borrowing these conceptions from the ideal conception known as Sri Krishna. Coming up on time, and I know I don't have a pretty hard stop, so I just wanted to open up for questions. And again, what we want to recap is this conclusion or this story, these pastimes, and this process of thinking of life in a way that our beliefs, our meaning, should I say, the meaning that we put on life or the lack thereof creates a proper and improper conception. And we can continue to guess, and most people are guessing or saying that it just doesn't exist. But we have practical application. This is the science, because as you practice this and as you correct your missteps and aim towards controlling the 6 urges and serve with love and remember these pastimes, you will experience various forms of peace and ananda to that degree that you are developing that relationship with the absolute truth. And this conception, or any conception that you have to remember, is all resting and all available due to your best friend, Paramatma, in the heart of all conceptions. Now, if you're having false conceptions, he's the foundation, and you're playing in a false arena of conceptions. But he's still the foundation, allowing you to do whatever you'd like to do. And so, if we have a misstep due to associating with the mode of ignorance or the mode of passion, and we see ourselves envying anybody, think of this story. If we become victim and our speech is not of a sattvic nature or a Shuddha sattvic nature or a devotional nature or an encouraging nature, again, speech that's not encouraging one to be their ideal selves, we can classify it in a certain conception. But then once we realize, oh, I have made a mistake, and please think about this as you are listening to this. If once you have made a mistake, you want to be sure to correct it as soon as possible so you don't keep on going down that ripple effect of destruction with the asuras. And once you do that, then you will be able to birth realities that will be in alignment with Prahlad. And these are all leelas in order for Shri Krishna to enjoy and for us to see a glimpse of who we truly are, to remember and get out of this nescience and out of this world of temporary conceptions. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Sri PALAKA Prabhu. So I guess you're done with the, okay. Dear devotees, if anyone may have questions, comments, reflections, you may want to ask, share. You indicate by using the hand emoji or your physical hand.
Yeah, and I would say, I would like this to be either questions or comments. I definitely wanted to put a question out to the audience of, has there been a time that you have realized that maybe one of the urges got the better of you, and maybe you acted in the improper time or too soon, or you just reacted in a way that was not ideal? And what did you learn from it? Or if you've been meditating on how to better temper the or control or tolerate the urges of the belly, the senses, the tongue, anger, etc. What have you learned from that?
Well, I would say I will try to attempt to remember something. You see, there is a saying, it says, this tongue I have in my buccal cavity is lying in a very slippery zone. So sometimes it just rolls. So sometimes words just come out of my mouth. And after that, I realized that, oops, I shouldn't have said it, but it's already out and I can take it back. So I've been trying. I've not always been pretty good, but I've been trying to restrain myself getting words out of my mouth, because once they come out, I cannot take them back. And that is why I rather prefer writing to speaking. Because when I write, I have the advantage of thinking about it rather than just speaking. Speaking is, just like parrot-like. It just flows. And that is what I'm working on. But one other example is when Gurudev asked me to lead Kirtan some time ago, and I became very much swollen-headed because there were other senior, better Kirtaniers than myself. But because Gurudev asked me to lead the Kirtan, which was a Sunday feast program, I became so proud. But I was so lucky in the sense that Guru and Krishna corrected me even before the time, because out of nowhere, I lost my voice before the program. And somehow I was able to understand why I lost my voice, because I became falsely proud. So at my stage, these things come many times and go, but like I said, I've been praying, especially with my words, to slow it down, because once they come out, I will not be able to correct them. So that is what I try to do. Shri PALAKA, Prabhu, I don't know if
That's good.
with my description, if you have some
Have you
prescription
experienced
for me.
I actually have another question for you. Have you experienced with that level of mindfulness on speech any techniques that have been able to elongate your tolerance before you need to speak, the urge to speak? Or have you noticed any common themes that have been helpful?
One thing I try to do is, I said, okay, let me give myself a little bit more time to see if the situation will correct itself, even before I say a word or before I do anything. Let me see if the situation will correct itself. Because sometimes it's just like, it's amazing. Many times, like when Gurudev is speaking, while he is speaking, I'll be having so many questions. And by the time he's done speaking, most of the questions I had already been answered. And that is because I did not jump into asking the question, because I exercised a little bit of patience. The questions were answered even before asked. So I'm trying to learn how to develop this patience, like you said, to elongate the time I have to let things out and sometimes letting things out immaturely or prematurely could lead to unforeseen problems. So that is what I'm trying to do, but I'm not there yet. I'm still working on it.
No, that's great. That's
Yeah.
great. I definitely see that theme of delay, delay, the time factor of it has to happen now because this moment may disappear is so strong. It says that after the absolute truth looks at the conception of Prakriti, it looks at Prakriti, what quality first gets tied into all the temporary conceptions? It's time. it's it's a it's a time frame of, oh, when can I have that conception of happiness? Oh, when can I move away from this conception of distress? Constantly happening. And there's a sense of fear that is associated with it. And so Srimad Bhagavatam, third canto, chapter 26 says, once that glance happens, the jivas are impregnated throughout all of these temporary conceptions due to their previous natures. And we're forced to work and we're forced to act and we're forced to behave in so many ways. And some conceptions are very, very strong, could last a lifetime. In some conceptions we are adopting right now. And so Gurudev would always say, make sure you're utilizing the right conceptions. You don't want to be digging yourself in a ditch, because consciousness should always be transformational and always be in a way that is dynamic and always growing. It's never stagnant. And so Ditti in the 43rd, 44th to 45 says that where you exhibited one of the qualities, you said proper deliberation, right? So this is the quality. If you see you did something wrong, what did you say? I started to think about it. I started to use my intelligence and say, as I wait, many things are resolved. I feel like I need to do this. I need to do that. I need to do this. And really, I just need to stop being so attached to these conceptions and focus on the absolute truth. And then as we are doing that, and as we're watching, hey, what time are we going to sleep? Because there's modes all throughout that, as Diti was showing us. What time are we eating? How are we eating? What are we doing with our tongue? What are we doing with our belly? What are we doing with our genitals? All of these different urges are micro effects, right? She says, it's better that my son be killed by the absolute truth than by the curse of a Brahmin. Because when we go against the will of the absolute truth or these divine conceptions, and how do we know it? We read Srimad Bhagavatam, and it shows how to stay in alignment at all times. Shravanam Kirtan Vishnu Smaranam. And it says, but if we don't course correct, then the ripple effects get stronger and stronger, and our ability to relate to those conceptions that were birthed out of Ditti that are more in line with Hiranyakashipu becomes stronger. We think we can enjoy Prakriti, but she remains just like a shadow on the ground. And we're trying to enjoy, but it's so flickering. It's nothing. Ravana did not get Sita. He got perverted reflection. It was just an illusion. And that's what we get. We get these shadows on the ground trying to enjoy that which is supposed to be enjoyed by the absolute truth.
Thank you so much. So we got to Anadi Dedanam Prabhu. Please, you may unmute.
Hi, Hare Krishna Prabhu. Accept my humble obeisance. Thank you. So, Prabhu, what kind of lesson can we draw from Diti's mistake? Because out of her mistake, at least we have Narashinga Dev Bhagavan. So, is it always the case that whatever mistake that one made, isn't that there will be some sort of advantage within that mistakes that someone may make rather than to condemn it entirely?
Could you just re-say that last sentence? I want to make sure I captured it. You were saying when somebody makes the mistakes, and you said something about condemn.
Yeah, isn't that any mistake that one may make still have some sort of advantage within that mistake rather than we condemning it entirely?
Yes, yes. But the person who made the mistake, and that's what Ditty is showing, Ditty perfectly exemplified this. She made the mistake. And once she realized her mistake after proper deliberation, after lamenting, that she said, oh, I went against the will of the absolute truth. Right. And so when we go against the will of the absolute truth, then we ideally do lament a little bit and say, oh, yeah, this is not the way. I need to I need to perform some type of penitence and properly correct my behavior. If I was speaking harshly, next time I should not speak harshly. But then I need to properly deliberate to say, why did I speak harshly to begin with? Sometimes when I speak harshly, I realize I'm lacking sleep. And then my temper gets a lot shorter. And it's just like, oh, and I can feel it inside. It's just like, oh, hey, why did that person say that? Why did they do this? And I already told this person this thing, and now I'm telling them again. And all of a sudden I start feeling this agitation. It's like the long thread. It's like a ticking time bomb. And everybody has that what is the fuse rope. And it's being lit. And if you're not having the proper activities, a proper sadhana in place, then that fuse can become very short, very short. And so somebody bumps you, and now you're ready to kill somebody at Chick-fil-A. You know, it's it's one of those type of behaviors because people do irrational things when they're not properly aligned. And again, think about how Ditti's comment says it's better for her to get her son to be purified by the absolute truth than a normal person. Again, to that degree of that conception, to that degree that is out of alignment, again, most of the time our alignments are much smaller, much smaller. And so there will be reactions. However, we should say, hey, is this something I can actually course correct? Is this something I want? Is this in alignment with my goals? And if not, we should pray very hard to get away from those conceptions. If not, we rationalize it, and then a little misstep will be like a crack in the foundation, and water will get in there and tear up the whole building eventually. Does that make sense?
Well, Prabhuji, if I may attempt to shed a little bit more light to Anadine and Prabhu's question. The last part of his question, he was trying to find out from your humble self, DT made an offense. She committed an offense. She made something, she committed something improper, wrong. But out of that mistake, we got Prahlad Maharaj. Out of that mistake, we got Srini Shimhadev. And the verse actually says that this Prahlad will become so exemplary that great saints will try to emulate him. So even though DT committed this mistake, but from that mistake also came some positive things. So should we condemn the person who made the mistake, who committed the mistake outright, when out of such mistake, there was something positive also coming out of it? So I guess if you may shed a little bit more light to that part of his question.
Many times we are unable to see the extent and the seriousness of the mistake at that moment that the mistake occurs. It takes some time, many times. And there's many variables that will determine how big of a mistake it is. We can see a mistake externally and say, oh, that was a mistake. But remember, before Ditty even said anything, she was speaking out of envy for her sister. right, around her sister, saying, why don't I have this? She felt that lacking, that need to fill the void. And so we have to be very careful of judging others, especially when they are a part of this process. My previous comments were more tool sets to look at your own subjective reality, your own qualities that you are experiencing, and then relate which personalities are these feelings, are these activities, are these thought processes a part of? Which conception can I see I am associating with via the lens of Srimad Bhagavatam? Now, naturally, when you're talking about people that are in your social circle, there is the thought process of love the sinner, not the sin, right? Love the sinner, not the sin. And so handling this in an appropriate fashion, making sure that we understand the relationship. Now, remember, in the story, relationship is key. The nature of the relationship is key. It says, because she acted that way towards the absolute truth, Lord Shiva, and her husband, that matters. So whoever we're seeing this mistake, if it's not us and it's somebody else, what is your relationship to them? What is the nature of that relationship? Who are they? Because you don't want to commit an offense, because the offense that we commit is not going to be the Supreme Personality Godhead coming as in Sringade to liberate us. It's going to be the curse of a Brahmin. It's going to be the reactions of those who are around our level, right? Those who are in human society. And there are negative reactions or tamasic reactions when we're not speaking with the sattvic nature. And so we want to be very cautious of how we handle it. We want to take time, we want to take a breath and say, hey, do we need to? Am I in the position to? Should I have somebody else correct that behavior? How can I course correct? It's almost like when Gurudev would say, if you hear devotees talking bad about each other, number one, it's the first offense, right? You're letting these conceptions of garbage within your pilgrimage of consciousness. And it's going to destroy you. But if you have to engage in course correcting behavior for someone else, you want to say, hey, how the consciousness to be, how can I best help this person away from this misconception that they may have had that has led them to act in such a way? And so that's how I would approach it.
Wow.
So
Thank you so much.
sorry, not a simple answer, but again, I'm just trying to stay linked to the verse of why do they say due to the curse of a Brahmin, or they will be despised, and those who cause fear in other living entities, no matter what species of life they're in, they will feel that feeling of what's the word in that verse? Basically despised, even amongst their own species. So when we see that type of quality, also, if you feel that type of quality, if you see that type of quality, think about the roots of that. Think about the karmic reactions of that. Think about how, if you're experiencing it yourself, what could I be doing to help course correct if you don't like that feeling? And it all gets course corrected through bhakti yoga eventually.
Well, Hare Krishna. I have a follow-up question, but we'll go to Sri Harichakra Prabhu first. Harichakra Prabhu, please, you may unmute.
Yeah. Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Dandavad Pranam. All glories to you. All glories to Buddha. All glories to Prabhu. And all glories to the assembled devotees. Yeah, I've been listening attentively to your deliberation, and I have a few things that I need some clarification. Because basically speaking, we know that in this world, there will be no meaning to heaven if there is no hell. Neither will there be any meaning to up if there is no down. So this duality stage in these dualities in our system seem to have a great meaning. And maybe due to the way we perceive them. That is how we see wrong or bad. Because other than that, why would Krishna tell us in Ishopanishad that we should know these two concepts? We should know the two concepts, and that is the only way that we can elevate ourselves to pure consciousness.
Mm.
And when we see anytime Krishna manifests here on this planet also, he uses it. Whatever we on this our level, whatever we will consider to we consider it to be what do we call it? Low consciousness or bad things. Krishna also uses it. It's like example, according to the Vedic warfare, when you are fighting with someone with a club, you are not supposed to hit below the belt. But we see Krishna telling Bhima to hit below the belt. So the point I'm trying to make is these dualities and all these things happen. They all emanate from the Lord Himself. So how can we draw the line between trying to justify our behavior, maybe something with that others may think is wrong, trying to justify it, or how we can actually use that concept to get ourselves elevated? Are you getting what I'm trying to do? That in a nutshell, what I'm trying to say is that basically speaking, I feel that everything that we have is for us to use for our own elevation. So we will see it as bad or wrong, as wrong or good, only based on our consciousness. Other than that, everything is here available for us, whether when we go through or when we see it happening, they are there to help us to move on, go on. And I see that a lot of a gist of those things being said in Vegetator Marai's spiritual warrior books, how he's always telling us whatever situation that we encounter, it's an opportunity for us to make a progress. So can you throw some light on it, if you really get the point I'm trying to make?
Let me restate it and see if I have it.
Okay.
I can tell it's a beautiful question, beautiful point. And it's how can we tell, especially because we have previous baggage, right? We have like a lens on that's going to say our own predisposition of what right and what wrong is, or what our propensities to, enjoy or not enjoy are. And so how do we figure out how to best address that as we go on our process? Is that it?
No.
Yeah, I didn't
The
think so.
question the question I'm trying to ask is that, you see, many a time when we are treading on the spiritual path, I mean, more particularly as devotees are always trying to draw a line. This is Maya, and this is
Oh yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. And
not Maya, right?
Yes.
So in trying to draw those lines, even though sometimes something happens to you, or you go into a particular situation, and maybe that situation has been brought to you for you to learn a lesson and use the situation as a stepping stone to make progress in your life. And yet, because people are saying, "Oh, this is Maya, you are in Maya. Oh, this is Maya," instead of you to making good use of the situation, now you tend to become depressed, and instead of getting elevation out of it, you rather get demoted by that situation. So yeah, so personally, like I said, I personally feel that everything in this world, in the absolute sense, is perfect and complete. but it can only be bad or wrong based on our perception of that situation, of that thing. Is that
So
a true way of?
it reminds me of how the famous analogy of when one has jaundice, they can't
Mm,
particularly trust if they're tasting things properly,
mm,
because they might taste something that's sweet and think of it as bitter
mm,
when they're afflicted by jaundice. And
mm,
therefore we have to rely on the process that has been given to us by our parampara, right? It's
mm,
those teachings that allow us to analyze reality, analyze our behavior in such a way that it gives us guidelines in order to maximize our ability to not only stay focused on the goal, to know the goal, but then also to make sure that when Prakriti sends conceptions that could bewilder us or do bewilder us, and we want to go down that river of illusion sometimes, even though we have the goal in mind, but we could be going in another direction. We have to, very similar, properly deliberate, but then also deliberate in such a way that understand that even our own conceptions could be misaligned, right? Naturally, Bhagavatam is constantly saying align your perceptions properly, but it can easily be misaligned. And most people don't even try to use Bhagavatam. So they're even more lost in what to actually do. And they're not, if they're not, what's the word? If they're not conscientious in every moment, then anybody can fall victim to it. Even if it's just a little bit of light, it's all just gradations of these conceptions. And so understanding that there's a social circle that's in place, there's a varnashram system that is in place. Now, it might not be the ideal varnashram, but you have a human society that you're around. And ideally, you have mentors, gurus that you can speak to, shiksha gurus that you can speak to, senior devotees that you can speak to, wise people within your circle to discuss and to open up and share and to deliberate with them, right? Kashyapa, Diti, they were discussing. Good things happen out of a bad situation due to interactions with your peers or superiors. And so that can be a checklist. It reminds me of when I asked Gurudev about, oh, what if you have a realization that you don't see in Shastra, or that's different than the Guru? How do you check it? And he said, you have to do it through Guru, Sastra, and Sadhu. And through that, understand what is your nature, what is your purpose. Stand in line with that, not just temporarily, your temporary dharma, but your eternal dharma, because all of those are going to be impressions or some scars that affect your vision. And so if you're out of alignment there, or if we're out of alignment in any way, shape, or form, so the right course of action, the right purpose is per your dharma, per that particular situation. And then once you understand and establish that particular dharma, you say, okay, in this example, this ditthi-like conception or asura-like
mm,
conception that I
mm,
found myself to be a part of, right? Again, it could be a minor one, right? But if you're noticing it, then it's to when I'm engaging in that activity, is it too much or too little? How much do I need in order to be satisfied of that?
mm,
Draw it there,
mm,
create a baseline of it, and say, hey, if I yell at that person for 5 minutes, then next time I'm going to cut it down to 1 minute. Take it down, go in the right direction. It's the regulation process, right? We have to constantly regulate. It's not just the four regulated principles, but it's the principle of regulation across all of our thoughts and behaviors. And so if it's not in alignment of your ideal self, you should ask yourself, is this an ideal? If I have possibly ideal, possible, good, better, best, basically. Good, better, best. Which one is that? And then once I'm at a better, then ask yourself, properly deliberate via Guru Sastra Sadhu. How can I make it a little better? How can I make it a little better? And keep on asking for guidance based off of your own nature. With prayer, will provide a lot of progress there. I don't know. Does that go
Yeah,
along
it
the
helps. It helps. It helps. But the way you are answering it is like you are answering it based on, let's say, as the individual's progress.
okay.
But what about the other way around? What about based on my interaction with another person, whereby, I mean, it's like, let's for instance, how would I tell a pig? How would I tell a pig that eating stool is not enjoyment? I mean, so far as the pig is concerned, eating stool is great enjoyment. So if I go forward to the pig and I say, hey, eating stool is really bad. It's no enjoyment. It's actually a pain. What would he think? The pig would think that I'm crazy. I'm not normal. Something is wrong with my head.
Mm,
Right?
mm,
So so in trying to help myself and help others along the line, uh how would I align, what do we call it, the good, I mean, the unaligned consciousness with the aligned consciousness to bring somebody like that in the level of the pig? Or, I mean, I'm using the pig just as an extreme case, but
okay.
to be able to bring the pig out of the level for the realization that stool is actually a horrible thing and it's not good for you, and it's not like, how do I do that? Because
Yes.
there must be a way. Other than that, then everything I'm doing will be selfishness. If I'm only thinking about myself, how
Yes.
to elevate myself and how to try to align myself perfectly. And I think that personally, I think that is why the scripture is saying that we should know both nations and God, light, simultaneously, side by side. And
Yes.
it's
Yes.
the only way that we can make progress. Uh,
Yes. It's interesting. It's a big question, and
mm,
again, I do believe it's talked about in this verse, right? It's
mm,
talking
mm.
about other people. That's the Varnashram system, human
Yeah.
societies that are
Mm,
outside of ourselves. How are they to be properly aligned? And thinking about it from a global perspective, Bhakti Swami would always say, in order to set up a system that allows people to go from an animal consciousness to divine consciousness, we need to have a proper system of education. And we were talking about that before. We are so ill educated right now. And the so called Brahmanas of this time, these materialistic scientists and philosophers, are all telling everybody that there is no meaning and that your consciousness is an illusion. So if you have a society where the normal people, the Shudras, the Vaishyas, the Kshatriyas, and even the Brahmins are all in this type of framework from birth, and then creating a sadhana of brainwashing and enforcement of the conceptions of ditthi their whole life, how do you shake free? How do you shake somebody free of that? And what's beautiful about it is Srimad Bhagavatam is full of all of those stories. And what's beautiful about that is as we properly deliberate on our day-to-day activities, we will see that we're not much different than them. We just have a maybe lesser degree of the conceptions of ditthi, or we at least understand that. But as we go about our devotional life, one thing in the morning we discuss Srimad Bhagavatam, and there's a few people, and we're all sharing, and we always ask, "How was your night before?" Because we always say, "Oh, were you able to go to bed early? Were you able to get your sadhana done early? If not, why not? What are you going to do better the next day? How did it work out? Why did it happen?" And we see that we're actually trying to preach to ourselves. But as we go through this process, there was a time when we did not know about Srimad Bhagavatam. And in that consciousness, we had to somehow make that switch. What helped us to make that switch? Naturally, sadhu sangha is going to be number one, making sure you have the proper association. Ditthi didn't associate with time at the proper time, or The association at the improper time has reaction. Association with anything has reaction. So we have to somehow start blocking the associations of tamas, start minimizing the bad character development that occurs, and then apply as much love and devotion in our interaction with those people at that time. But I do believe it's very important for us to document our own conscious evolution as well as analyze others who have made that step, because there's a whole world of people that have these misconceptions. And again, even us, when we look at ourselves, we'll see that we have a ton of them. And so it is that same process, to different degrees. How do we extend the mercy, give the association? How do we engage them in service? How do we give them prasadam? Right? Srila Prabhupada said, people are so animalistic. When he was first opening up the temples, he would just give prasadam. He would just give food, because that's all people really care about, just like animals. They would just eat like animals, eat like animals, eat like animals, and they'll come back because that's the consciousness. However, he says eventually, once they've been purified by the prasadam, by the kirtan, by the association, then eventually they'll ask, hey, why am I here? And why am I able to abstract all of these moral reasonings on what is good, what is better, and what is best? And who was creating that? And who is creating that? And where does this all come from? But it takes time. It takes time because our educational system is broken and the Brahmins have failed us. But Gurudev says he is trying to set up this most ideal society, but it has to be an ahimsa society, a society based off nonviolence. And nonviolence starts with our speech, both internally and externally. Our association, both internally, both externally, because ahimsa is any activity that does not properly align us to our ideal self, and our ideal self is always aligned to the supreme self. I have just a couple more minutes, 11:45. So,
all right. Thank you so much.
thank you for the question, by the way. It's a dynamic question.
Yeah.
Does anybody else want to answer that or shed light on that?
Sacred, you may unmute, and then we'll go to Govinda Prabhu. Just so Govinda Prabhu sent up. Sacred, can you unmute yourself, please?
Hare Krishna, greetings.
Hare Krishna.
I'm thankful to be here and be in association. So my question, with the recognition of recognizing that at times in this life we have experienced being a part of, because like the previous person said, once you experience certain things in life, you can recognize that all things, especially when you continue to do your work, can turn out for the good. However, for everyone, because we become instigators of bringing people opportunities, including ourselves, to go into this, going to embody the absolute truth of who we are. However, the way in which and the method in which we do it, I found with myself as a parent, going into parenting adult children, and even throughout parenting, that recognition of not only wanting to just inspire, especially with adult children more so than little ones, because I find the little ones are my teachers, and all of my children are my teachers. They help instigate me to become the greatest version of me. However, at times it can be a bit challenging, especially if they're choosing certain things and I want to interject and share with them a truth that I feel like will help them and assist them, but they have their own free choice and free will. And so I find in those moments that I'm looking at, who do I want to be in this moment? What are my values? What is the who is the what is the absolute truth of who I am. I want to be the matriarch, not just reacting and responding. But how do I guide from this space of bringing the instigating the absolute truth in them, because once truth is heard, truth recognizes truth. However, I can go through my own bit of anxieties before I can even get to my own absolute truth. But what I found and what my question is at times I'm recognizing that environment, even with immediate family, that are not, that may not be, because there's no judgment to where anyone is within, within myself. However, do you agree that at times we have to shift our environment in order to get ourselves to the space to where we can then be in these environments around these people? Because the ultimate goal, even for my, or the ultimate desire even for myself, is to be in that space where I can be around all of my extended family and have this love. And I have been, but I found my energy completely drained, and not because I was trying to be this guru to my family and be this person to my family, but I just felt like my energy was constantly being consumed, or people were constantly trying to see, well, how much further can I push her before there's a reaction, you know? Um, and like this testing of my strength to be able to compose myself. And but what are your thoughts on shifting environment in order to um to strengthen this, to strengthen in, those qualities, like you said, to get my tongue to where it needs to be. But I recognizing that you have to be in the environment as well to get the practice. you know, because if you're by yourself, you're not able to truly practice what you need to. So, like you said, that pause, what did you eat, things like that. But yeah, just what are your thoughts about environment?
Yes. The thoughts about environment are really crucial, especially in regards to family, right? It becomes extra tricky around family environments, and it sounds like you have a considerable amount of people that are depending on you and your leadership, and the fact that you're here says a lot. So it's they're in good association, but it sounds like there's multiple personalities that you're dealing with, and I'm assuming they're across the spectrum of ideal to not ideal. Is that accurate?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, to say the
And
least.
including myself, because
Yes.
sometimes I'm not in the most ideal space that I want to be, and I'm finding myself at least being able to say, hey, right now is not the most ideal time for me to speak on this.
Yes. So there's an instruction by our acharyas, those who are leading by example. So they practice Srimad Bhagavatam to perfection, and they wrote down their realizations for our guidance. And locations is a critical one, right? It's one of those areas that has to be properly addressed. Now, the ideal location is the holy Dham, right? Sri Vrindavan Dham. But how many of us are actually able to go there, are actually able to live there? It's the place where we can best, they say, absorb our consciousness to find our ideal self and our ideal friend. And so it follows up by saying, if you're not able to live in Vrindavan, then try to go to spaces that are created to emulate Vrindavan. And so for us in the West, it's usually a temple, right? That's the closest location where people can take refuge and take association of other people who are trying to fall in love with the absolute truth, who are trying to serve the absolute truth, who are trying to uplift humanity by bringing about these absolute principles to find purpose in every interaction. And if we're not able to do that, and I wasn't when I was a kid, I lived 2 hours away from the temple. So Bhakti Swami told me to take shelter of Srila Prabhupada's writings and make that the holy Dham, make that your association. And then as you're in your house, if you don't have enough room to have an actual temple room, then have a temple corner. You know, create some level of an auspicious place that you will respect, that you will keep the boundaries to keep the wrong conceptions out, create a ceremony out of it. I think last time I was here, I was talking about this Buddhist book and about meditation. They also said the same thing. They said, if you want to be consistent at your meditation, find a certain location on the floor or wherever you're going to meditate and stick to that location. Make that the meditation area. Because then eventually your mind, even within the chaos of day-to-day life, will respect that location. If you respect it, if your intelligence respects it, eventually your mind will respect it. And once your intelligence respects that, then you utilize the good association you're having, those teachers that you admire, from the Shastra that you read, and then you start to meditate on those practices within that sacred space. Sometimes you can't do that. So then it's good to have a mental, conceptual space also. And Bhagavatam can give us that conceptual space of, as you're realizing that you're not in the midst of good association and you might be bombarded with attacks and things like that, then we can take shelter of that example of Prahlad, where he went inside of himself, realizing that all of these temporary realities of distress, of hardship, of everything that we don't want sometimes come upon us even if we don't ask. But as we continuously discuss, remember Krishna says, I love when those who love me speak to me as their best friend. And so we should speak, we should pray, we should ask, we should talk to. Remember, any conception you have is being provided due to your own past activities, but the meaning that's there is all provided through Shastra, through Paramatma, or the super soul within. He holds all of these conceptions. And so we pray and say, I'm not sure why I'm experiencing this. I'm not sure how to help this person. I'm not sure why I'm even here, but you have me here and you've given me this subtle reality and this objective reality. And I'm dealing with other human beings within human society. So first, how can I aid them if they're not concerned about the temporary, if they're not concerned about the eternal ideals? How can I at least situate them in their temporary ideals, with their occupation, with their relationship, with their health, with their diet, with their sleep? How can I make sure I'm contributing to them to be more aligned to the nature of Vishnu or goodness? And then that way they will elevate their consciousness, and then they will be better association for you. But prayer is key, especially in very difficult situations like that. And then when you can't do it permanently, but try to schedule a week out, a month out. Again, every little bit counts because nothing's free. There's all cause and consequence, reaction. It's all there.
Thank you so much.
One more, then
it's okay. Yeah, beautiful. The secret, I really enjoyed your sharing, and
yes, thanks for the question. Great question.
Yeah, PALAKA Prabhu, thank you for the response. PALAKA Prabhu, please, we are on our knees, or I should say, we are offering our full dandavat like a stick. There are two hands up. I know your time is kind of limited. You've been here much longer than usual, and much longer than I expected. So thank you for that. But Govinda Prabhu, no, hold on. Govinda Prabhu had his hand up, and then after that, we may go to Mother Sati Devi. So Govinda Prabhu, please, you may unmute Shri Govindaji.
Yes, thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, Dandavat Pranams, our glory to Gurudev, our glory to Srila Prabhupada, and our glory to the assembled devotees. Yeah, Prabhu, my quick question is about Srila Vyasadeva. We all know Srila Vyasadeva is Krishna himself, and he published so many literatures, but he was still feeling despondent. He felt very low spirits. He was unhappy until his spiritual master came around and to reveal to him what is the cause of his unhappiness. And so he got to know that he knew to write and describe the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So my question is, what was his environment? Because if you're not happy, there must be something that is causing or blocking your unhappiness. Was it because of his environment? Because he has pleased the Supreme Lord enough by written all these Vedic literatures. But yet still he was not happy. So what is the happiness that he was referring to? And how does that relate to our present life in trying to render devotional service? We are also sometimes unhappy. Is it because we are not pleasing the Supreme Lord enough? And what is to be done so that we can be happy? Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate the question. In order to address why Srila Vyasadeva wasn't happy after compiling so many books of knowledge for humanity to live by, for humanity to progress with, for humanity to find happiness in all aspects of life, right? Literally, it's some of the law books for all of humanity. And so it was a great, great endeavor. And so most people will be ecstatic. However, yes, he was not satisfied and he was scratching his head. Understanding the purpose of activities is always important. The importance of how do we ensure that the people that we're dealing with, the environment that we're in, how do we leave it more ideal? It's almost like dealing with somebody who's a heroin addict. And if we only show them how to stop temporarily, just for them to pick up that habit again, and then we write another book about how to stop, but they only stop temporarily. So many times this cycle occurs and we see, okay, now they're doing good, now they're doing bad. Or even when he was speaking about Vedanta, the end of all Vedas, many times people were confused on what the actual purport of that would be. Again, they knew all conceptions of past, present, and future. So they knew what was going to happen eventually. And Vyasadeva could sense that something is not right. Something is not right. He needed to predict the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. He needed to write Srimad Bhagavatam. He needed to show, if he was really going to show satisfaction, that most of the writings that he was going to write, especially in Kali Yuga, people would either not have access to, completely misunderstand, or use for their own conceptions of asura, like mentality of trying to enjoy separately from the absolute truth. So Narada Muni came and instructed him, you have to tell people how to show the heart the heart of all conceptions, the heart to humanity. You have to show how they can connect to the absolute truth through love and devotion beyond all of these temporary designations of Varnashram, because people will not have access to it. And so he brings about a large time frame, of benefits, right? Summum bonum, the greatest benefit to all. And so Srimad Bhagavatam was written right after that. And so we should understand that what makes Srimad Bhagavatam so unique in our lives is the Harinam Sankirtanam, how we actually think about it. Again, every conception gets boiled down to a word. And there's a word for all of existence that is the most ideal word. That's Sri Krishna. As we share that knowledge with people and how we connect to him with love and devotion, we will become happier. But we have to make sure that as we are feeling this level or any sense of dissatisfaction, we should remember what this conversation was and analyze that first. Are we being too miserly with our endeavors? But here's the Swami would say, if you're feeling depressed, that means you're thinking about yourself too much. When you're thinking about others, you're thinking about how to serve others, especially in the way that Srila Vyasadeva did with Srimad Bhagavatam, then naturally we start thinking about how we can maximize our own position. And so if we're driving a car, we say, hey, who am I interacting with? How can I enhance this situation? Maybe today it's just a little bit. Maybe it's a card. Maybe it's just a conversation with that passenger, and you can start having a discussion about something that will plant a seed, whether it's the mantra or whether it's the right question of saying, "Hey, did you ever ask who you really are?" Especially when all the previous conceptions of you are gone and they're nothing but a figment of your imagination for all intents and circumstances, and where you are going, and why are all your ancestors dead? And again, you can start planning questions to make them think, hold on, wait, am I supposed to know this? Why are you a victim of time? Why are you oppressed by time? Because there's teachings that say you are supposed to solve the problem of time. But not only are there teachings, but there are teachings in the most ideal fashion. And not only are they in that most ideal fashion, they are presented to us in the most ideal way for us to accept, where we can sing and dance and eat and play with people who are all on this same journey. But analyzing our own situation, analyzing our thoughts and behavior, because every action has a ripple effect. So there's nothing free. There's nothing that is going to, nothing free outside of mercy of the devotees. But all of these reactions are a part of our life, and sometimes we're just experiencing some ripple effect karma that we have to go through. And so we're meant to just tolerate that. There's nothing wrong with being down, right? There's nothing wrong with being up. What becomes wrong with it when it prevents you from serving the absolute truth, right? Most of the time we just need to tolerate. We have a sense of distress, figure out how you can fix it. If you can fix it, fix it. And if you can't, understand that it's temporary. And what do you need to learn from it? Tolerate the urges. I know some people, they'll be like, oh yeah, if I don't have money, then I'm gonna rob somebody. It's just like, no. Tolerate, figure out another way. Figure out another way. And that's what the jivas do. They're constantly stealing. They're constantly trying to steal Sita. They're constantly trying to steal that moment. They're constantly trying to say, hey, I know time has its own divine order, but if I don't have my things that I need right now, then I'm going to feel unhappy. And that unhappiness, somebody's going to have to pay for, whether it's through my words, actions, or deeds. And then that creates ripple effects that creates a mirror of your next external environment, because we're just mirroring what we are. And so trying to figure out, are we properly aligned from mind, body, and spirit? Is our association, just like Sacred was asking, how is our association? But most importantly, are we keeping our mind on the biggest goal, the biggest duty that we have per this temporary conception? And naturally, since we're listening to Srimad Bhagavatam, that will be aligned to Srimad Bhagavatam. via Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Thank you. I appreciate everybody's time and comments, and always feel very blessed to be in your association as you guys are carrying on the mission of our beloved teachers on how to set up the most ideal society. So I thank you for allowing me to get out of Maya for 2 hours.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, thank you so much for this 2 hours and some minutes more. It's very wonderful. We've learned a lot. And of course, we're always learning. I would just like to say to Mother Sacred Devi that I am nobody. So do not take my word as authoritative. But what I try to do in situations where it is so tough, so toxic, regardless of where I find it, if I cannot, then I will have to leave the environment. In my local tradition, there is a proverb that if you've been bitten by ants, you cannot keep standing in the army of the ants to drive out the ants. You have to move away from the ants to get those that are biting you off your body. So there may be some times in certain situations that the only alternative to get out of a messy situation is to leave the environment. With that being said, that is just a little food for thought. Like I said, I'm Mr. Nobody. But I would like to humbly request all the devotees to kindly unmute yourselves, and we all, with one love, one heart, chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra to express our deepest appreciation and gratitude to our beloved brother, His Grace PALAKA Prabhu, for sharing his love and wisdom with us as he always does today. Please, you may all unmute and we all do this one round of Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Jai. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Vacha Kalpatarabhyascha, Kripavinivyevacha, Bhutanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki Jai. All Paristes Grace PALAKA Prabhu ki Jai. All Paristes Samad Vaishnava Vaishnavi devotees ki Jai. All Paristes Jagat Guru Shri Prabhu.